Hello, and welcome to Nitty Gritty News. I'm your host, Frank Lattin. Today's topic, we want to just have an off-the-cuff discussion about politics. The Democratic National Convention is wrapping up today, in fact, in Philadelphia. And for the last few days, we've got a chance to hear the Democratic perspective on change and how they think current life should flow in the United States. Last week, for those who tuned in, they got a chance to listen to the Republican National Convention and give their voice and their perspective on the way things are shaping up in society and the direction their party would like to move the country. So today, I would just like to put the question out there to all our viewers. The question is, it comes down to, do you think America is moving in the right or the wrong direction? In listening to the Republican convention last week, the overwhelming message was one of doom and gloom scenario, while the Democratic convention, and particularly President Obama's speech last night, was one that resonates with hope, change, and seeing the brighter side in things that are going on today in America. So again, it really comes down to the fact of, as voters, as residents in this nation, do we feel that society is moving in the right direction or in the wrong direction? Now, I do have to let you all know this is a live call-in show. So please contact us with the number at the bottom on your screen for questions or comments. This is the Nitty Gritty News Show, brought to you by the Westside Writing Project. So what I like to do first is just get into a quick overview, short snippet of President Obama's speech just the other day at the Democratic National Convention. We'll hit just a minute of this, and I'd like to get you all's take on it.
Called America a shining city on a hill. Donald Trump calls it a divided crime scene that only he can fix. It doesn't matter to him that illegal immigration and the crime rate are as low as they've been in decades, because he's not actually offering any real solutions to those issues. He's just offering slogans, and he's offering fear. He's betting that if he scares enough people, he might score just enough votes to win this election. And that's another bet that Donald Trump will lose. And the reason he'll lose it is because he's selling the American people short. We're not a fragile people. We're not a frightful people. Our power doesn't come from some self-declared savior promising that he alone can restore order as long as we do things his way. We don't look to be ruled. Our power comes from those immortal declarations first put to paper right here in Philadelphia all those years ago. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that we, the people, can form a more perfect union. So,
the overall message there, again, was in President Obama's speech, was that things are not as bad as being portrayed by the Republican Party and by other members in the media. So the speech really, again, I think resonates to, the Democratic Party's persistence in terms of trying to continue the legacy of Obama. Obviously, with Hillary Clinton winning the nomination, that would be sort of, some would think, a seamless transition in terms of from Obama to Clinton, given the fact that she served in Obama's cabinet. The Republicans on the other side see Hillary Clinton, a win for Hillary Clinton, as more a continuation of Obama's policies, which they vehemently opposed since day one from Obama being in office. So it really comes down to a critical point of your view or your perspective of America and where we are today. So, the convention I thought was very interesting in terms of, I tuned in last night particularly to hear speeches by Vice President Joe Biden, former New York Mayor Mike Bloomberg, and VP Select and Tim Kaine. And these guys really were speaking to maybe a different demographic, but I think they were speaking to the whole of the Democratic Party. But in listening to these guys, I really, I really tuned into the message, and I think they're both all of these guys speak from the heart. I don't think anybody is being insincere in their comments or what their view of America. It's just two opposing views. So, in hearing that, what I'd like to do here is just play a brief snippet of Joe Biden's speech, and I'd like to hear your questions or comments regarding this particular speech.
Let's listen to a second without voters here. I mean this sincerely, we should really think about it. His cynicism is unbounded. His lack of empathy and compassion can be summed up in a phrase I suspect he's most proud of having made famous: "You're fired." I mean, really, I'm not joking. Think about that. Think about that. Think about everything you learned as a child, no matter where you were raised. How can there be pleasure in saying you're fired? He's trying to tell us he cares about the middle class. Give me a break. That's a bunch of malarkey. Tell you.
So, again, I do want to remind everyone, this is a live call-in show. Please contact us at the number on your screen with your questions or comments. Today's discussion is just an off-the-cuff discussion about politics in general. The Democratic National Convention, the Republican National Convention. Did you hear anything last night that swayed you, that made you feel you are proud of being a Democrat or you despise being a Democrat? We just want to talk about it and have an off-the-cuff discussion. Again, this is the Nitty Gritty News Show, brought to you by the Westside Writing Project. So, in hearing, so I will get into my perspective just in a few minutes. But again, I want to go through a few things here first, because in this show, I really don't like to just spend a half hour up here talking about my point of view. I can do that at any time. It's really about your callers, hearing your voice, hearing your perspective on things that are going on in the world today as it relates to us. So, but I would like to point this out, Now, whether you are a fan of the Democratic Party or Hillary Clinton or not, that's up to you. But in watching the convention last night, I got a sense that, it really was history in the making, in the sense that you have the first African-American president, and Obama's speech, to me, came off as sort of like handing out a baton over to Hillary Clinton, and with her being the first woman, first winning the nomination I'm tongue-tied here, but as Hillary Clinton, the first woman winning the nomination for a major political party. That was huge. It was history in the making in the terms of the whole scene. But again, history is one thing. How voters turn out and vote, it can be a completely different story. So the thing is, will voters turn out and vote for history, or will they show up? Will they show up at all first, or will they vote for their own perspective? And speaking of voter turnout, let me mention this really quick. I did a little research here, and according to the Center for the Study of the American Electorate, now, voter turnout is going to be huge in this election by all measures. Everyone is saying voter turnout can be the difference in this election here. But according to the Center for the Study of the American Electorate, during the 2008 presidential elections, 62.3% of eligible voters actually voted. This was the highest turnout since the 1968 presidential election. And if you remember, that was the election that Obama, assumed the presidency. In 2012, only 57.5% of eligible voters actually voted. So that's just slightly over half the eligible population is actually participating in the presidential elections, which by all measures generally have a lower turnout than the statewide elections and the the other election, but the presidential election generally has the lowest turnout. So the big question for 2016 is, do you think that number will increase, or will the voter turnout dip? If it dips, most people are assuming that's an advantage for Trump. If Hillary Clinton is able to tap into that same voter electorate that helped bring Obama into office, that will bode well for her. Obama has huge popularity in a lot of the demographics that the Democratic Party holds dear, and Hillary Clinton will be counting on heavily. So I think that will be a huge turning point in just how many people actually turn out to vote. So what I'd like to do here first is, we heard a little bit from Obama. We heard a little bit from Biden. I had wanted to play a little bit of a speech from Giuliani, but I don't think I have it here ready. So what I will do is I'll cue it up just a little bit, and we'll play just a snippet of it.
Former mayor of New York City, Rudy Giuliani.
Let me bring this up, and I want you to hear really the theme, what I thought was the theme of the Republican speech.
I'm here to speak to you about a very serious subject: how to make America safe. The vast majority of Americans today do not feel safe. They fear for their children. They fear for themselves. They fear for our police officers who are being targeted with a target on their back. We pray for our police officers in Dallas and Baton Rouge and their families. And we say thank you to the Cleveland Police Department for protecting us. Thank you.
So, again, former Mayor Giuliani giving his spiel at the Republican National Convention. So, my question to viewers today: how do you feel about the two candidates? Do you plan to vote? You know, are you a typical voter that generally votes the ticket? You know, these are the type of things we want to just discuss here today. You know, in the time we have left, I'd like to give you, my take on this upcoming election is very interesting. Now, I'm a person who always exercises my, right to vote. However, in this election, I'm torn by the fact, and I do understand the significance of the election. A lot is riding on the line. We're in a really uncertain times in the world. The next president will be afforded to elect Supreme Court judges, and these two candidates represent the complete opposite ends of the spectrum. Now, in light of all that, I'm really torn because of the fact that, Bernie Sanders, who his name hovered over the Democratic National Convention for the last few days, and rightfully so. And I'm one who, I'll be honest with you, I had never heard of Bernie Sanders before his presidential run, and I'm a astute political person. I'm very, knowledgeable in politics and world affairs, but I had never heard of Senator Sanders. Now, his campaign did a lot to open the eyes of not only myself, but a lot of people around me about the Democratic Party, and I would say traditionally and most times I've voted Democratic. I've voted, my own conscience. I do tend to sway away from trying to just vote the party line. I'm not that type of person. I just can't succumb to that thinking, I really like to evaluate candidates independently and vote my conscience for the individual candidate. But Bernie Sanders' campaign really made me do a double take at Hillary Clinton. He successfully made the connection between Hillary Clinton's campaign and Mayor Rahm Emanuel. He definitely made the connection between just the ongoings and the normal mechanisms of the Democratic Party and how that really leads to this quote-unquote elitism and buffer class that's really prevalent in Chicago, So I'm really skeptical in terms of, do I really want to support that? Is the dilemma that I'm struggling with. Do I really want to support more of this elitism, this insider network, this friends covering for friends, the whole Democratic Party that has been hovering over the African American community for years? That's an interesting question. Now, I'm not against Hillary Clinton. I am not. In fact, before this campaign and even now, I think fond of Hillary Clinton. I mean, I don't have a problem seeing the first woman, elected as president of the United States. That's significant. That's change. That shows how far we've come as a nation. Me as a person, as an individual, my convictions are something else. And so those are some of the things. And I do understand some say, hey, if you don't vote for Hillary, if you don't vote, it's a vote for Trump. And when we talk about Donald Trump, the thing I think about Donald Trump is I don't think Donald Trump is a racist. Personally, no, I do not. I think Donald Trump is using racism as a means to an end. He's trying to become president. He knows there's racism exists in this country. And a lot of people play right into that. Some of the tactics he's used, he's anti-immigrants in some of his tone and his messages, I'm not for that at all, and so these are things I struggle with in terms of how I would vote this election. So, I'm looking to hear from you all. What do you think? This is a live call-in show. This is Nitty Gritty News. So please contact us at the number on your screen with your questions or comments. Now, I do want to just get into a little bit. I spoke to a few people and just asked people, what they think about the Democratic Party, what they think about the Republican Party. And the answers vary, but there was a general tone there that I'd like to speak to really fast. Most people were under the assumption that the Republican Party is not for blacks, not for African Americans, okay? I think, and I understand the perception, it's generally been a good old boys club. Historically, in the recent past, it's been a good old boys club, so I can understand that. I think we have a caller. Caller, can you go ahead with your question or comment?
Hello?
Yes, can you go ahead with your question or comment?
Yes.
Thank you for calling.
I was calling to comment. I think that with the internet, there is really no excuse. I'm a senior.
Okay.
So I had heard of Bernie Sanders, and I watch MSNBC on a regular basis, and he's been on there for the past 8 years.
Okay.
I knew his views. He is a beautiful person. He worked with Martin Luther King. He went to jail with Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was marching. And it is all about money. Democrats as well. Obama was the first Democrat that has ever depended on people to finance this campaign. We need to be more aware of what's going on around us. And for the things that we don't know, we should go to the internet and we can find out about people.
Thank you.
And their campaign and what their positions are.
Okay.
It is. It's all about money. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton did a lot of damage to the black community. And when I saw as many people as I did backing them, I was shocked.
Thank you. I appreciate your call.
People were older people.
So listen, I really appreciate your call, and you're getting to something that I'm, kind of talking about in the essence. I think first of all, again, although I hadn't heard of Bernie Sanders, his campaign galvanized me. It did something to me. In fact, Bernie Sanders' campaign to me really successfully tapped into the Occupy movement from a few years ago of Wall Street. He captured that theme. He captured that, the rich getting richer and all of us suffer. He crossed racial lines. He crossed all kind of demographic lines, and that touched me, you know. So again, his campaign is really, I think, what woke me up to the inner workings of the Democratic Party. I think we have another caller. Can you go ahead with your question or comment?
Yes, I can. You know, I started thinking about the Democratic Party differently just a short time ago, because when you look at the violence in Chicago, it's occurring in about 6 or 7 areas on the west and the south side. But it's the same 6 or 7 areas for the past 40 years. So then you think, well, wait a minute. If we wanted to quell this violence, we certainly could have done it over the last 40 years. So why has that, you know, been a problem?
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate. Thank you for your question. So you're right. You know, in terms of when we look at Democrats and Republicans, you know, generally speaking, you know, African Americans today, we are overwhelmingly support the Democratic Party, and that's fine. I got no problem with that. I think, you know, if we're doing that and we look at these major cities, most major cities are controlled by the Democratic Party. Most major cities with large African American populations are been run by the Democratic Party for the last 40 years or so. So if that's the case, then, you know, we need to, if we're going to criticize and look at the shortcomings of what we see as the Republican Party, we certainly have to do that with the Democratic Party. Since we're giving them our support, I think we need to be more critical of those in which we support, and in terms of analyzing, are we getting that reciprocal respect from the Democratic Party? So again, you know, these are issues that just, you know, surface, and like you, I'm not anti-Democrat, I'm not anti-Republican. I like the fact when people are having discourse and involved in a political process. To me, that's great. I'm the type of person that, when I'm in a barbershop, I'm always talking about something in the news, something going on. Not that I feel like I know everything, but it's just to generate that discussion amongst people and get a perspective, because a lot of people in neighborhoods have points of views and interests, but seldom do we have the time to voice them. So I really appreciate you calling in and voicing your concern. So, but again, even historically, you touched on something else. I'll touch on this as my last point. You know, again, as African Americans in traditionally supporting the Democratic Party and speaking to people, the general notion is that that's the party for African Americans, you know. But historically, you know, we African Americans we supported the Republican Party. You know, it was the Republican Party that, you know, during the early days of slavery and those days that African Americans really support. It wasn't until I think the 50s when a lot of the Southern Republicans, a lot of the Southern Democrats became Republicans. And so they had a strategy called the Southern Strategy, in which they reached out to Southerners who were, you know, upset that African Americans were voting and supporting Democrats. So it's convoluted when you get into which party is for which people. I don't even think that's a correct label to even look at. It's more or less, I think, again, analyzing candidates. You have to do your homework, seeing which candidates represent your interests, and sort of aligning yourself with those candidates and those interests. Not so much as supporting a blind party or the party ticket. You know, unfortunately, that hasn't gotten us too far, you know. So that's my spiel here on the political process. But again, thank you for taking part in this discussion. As the Democratic National Convention wraps up today, Republican Convention wrapped up last week. We just want to have this discussion. We are here every Thursday at 5 o'clock, Nitty Gritty News Show. This is a live call-in show. Callers, we appreciate you voicing your opinions and your concern on this show, because this show is for you. This is not a downtown show. We're from the neighborhood. We want to hear neighborhood perspectives and opinions on these real issues. So again, thank you for tuning in. This is the Nitty Gritty News Show, brought to you by the Westside Writing Project.